And ladies and gentlemen, the next session is SMW Conversation, Shipowners' Decision on the Multi-Fuel Transition, Pathways and Opportunities. We hope to give more time to the Q&As later on, so please continue to submit your questions via Pigeonhole. Let's put that on screen on the left and right if we can, the pigeonhole.at link. And please scan it and put in SMW 2022 so that you can enter and vote for the questions that you like to. And hopefully the moderator has some time to cover those questions later on. I'd like to invite our moderator. Let's welcome Dr. Sanjay Kuttan, Chief Technology Officer, Global Center for Maritime Decarbonisation, GCMD. Welcome, Dr. Sanjay Kuttan. Thank you for your applause. And joining Dr. Kuttan on stage are, first and foremost, let's welcome Takeo Akamatsu, Project Leader, Integrated Project for Development of NH3 Fuel Ship and Fuel Supply Chain, Marine Department, ITOCHU Corporation. Welcome, sir. Let's give him a big hand, please. Welcome, Takeo Akamatsu. Next, we have Jacob A. Sterling, Senior Director, Head of Decarbonisation, Innovation and Business Development, AP Moller, Maersk. Let's welcome Jacob, please. Oh yes, Jacob is joining us online. Yes. Hi, Jacob. And then we have Jerome Leprince-Ringuet, Vice President, Marine Fuel, TotalEnergies. Let's welcome Jerome, please. We have two more panelists, and we have Francois-Xavier Accard, Managing Director, CMA, CGM. Welcome. Let's welcome him. Thank you very much. And last but not least, let's welcome David Lim, Vice President Asia, E1 Marine LLC. Let's welcome David, please. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big hand to our panel.
Great. Thank you for hanging around to listen to us. We'll just get into it. Zero carbon fuel transition is the main lever to achieve IMO 2050 decarbonization targets. Obviously, we want to bend the curve. Energy efficiency, technological interventions, and potentially onboard carbon capture will have an important role to play as the maritime sector make every effort to reduce greenhouse gas emission burden on the environment, especially as green fuels ramp up its production to reach the scale required for mass adoption. The emerging narrative is that major ports need to be future ready by having provisions for multi-bunkering fuel availability to cater to different vessel needs. The alternative fuel like biofuel, ammonia, methanol, and even hydrogen have varying properties from current conventional low sulfur fuel oil, marine gas oil, and liquefied natural gas. These properties range from safety properties to energy content, both gravimetric and volumetric, to physical properties of its states, cryogenic and non-cryogenic. These variations means there are different operating paradigms, handling considerations, and interoperability with the current infrastructure that has implications to supply, demand, and regulatory stakeholders. We have today a great lineup of panelists to help us unwrap the opportunities and navigational buoys to help us move along the many pathways towards maritime decarbonization. Very quickly, I'll just introduce Mr. Takeo Akamatsu, who's the project leader from ITOCHU Corporation. Mr. Jacob Sterling, who's online, he's the Senior Director, Head of Decarbonization at AP Moller Maersk. We have Jerome Leprince-Ringuet from TotalEnergies, sorry. My French is not that good. Francois-Xavier Accard from CMA-CGN, and of course David Lim, Vice President from Application Engineering E1 Marine. Maritime efforts to improve energy efficiency has been ongoing through EEDI, SEEMP initiatives over the last decade or more. This has now increased to inclusions of EEXI and CII targets in the near future, coupled with IMO decarbonization targets of 2030 and 2050. So the maritime sector has been moving and is continue to move. It's a question of pace. So Jerome, very quickly, what are the key challenges and opportunities facing the shipping industry today in terms of decarbonization?
Well, thank you, Sanjay, and good morning, everyone. Let's just say it's very good to interact physically again. I'm thrilled about that. And I would say with the very recent IPCC report that has already been mentioned today, it's yet another opportunity to raise our collective awareness on the climate urgency. So for that, we have many of our companies that have set clear ambitions to go to net zero. And I can see within TotalEnergies, as we have set this ambition back in 2020, that it has driven the energies of our 100,000 employees in the right direction. And also it has made possible to connect our ambition with other companies' ambition. And that's the opportunity I see with this ambition. But indeed, there is a question on the reality of the challenges that we are facing. And if I wanted to pick one of them, I would say this is the lack of the very low carbon fuels now. It's not going to get at scale very, very soon. It's not overnight. And for that, we have one building block that we are looking at is hydrogen, green hydrogen. So this is a tremendous challenge that we all have. And I'm speaking as an energy company, as an energy supplier. We are looking at it. We have made it a core aspect of our strategy to develop the mass production of green hydrogen. And for that, we need renewable electricity. And this is another aspect of what is needed, is huge investments in renewables, meaning wind and solar, most of it, and it can be hydro, it can be other type of energies. And this is another angle where TotalEnergies is very involved. We have set a target of having 100 gigawatt of capacity in renewable by 2030. So we're acting now, we're starting now, we have started building this. To make one number, to try to be clear on that, if we were to replace the current bunker demand, half of it by hydrogen-based fuels, like e-methane, e-methanol, e-ammonia, or the others, that would need in the range of order of 1,000 gigawatt of renewable electricity. And that is a big number. But it's not out of reach. 1,000 gigawatt is something, I mean, we can achieve collectively. It just needs, and this is my point here, it needs clearer framework in terms of regulation, in terms of taxation. We have spoken about it already in previous panels. The carbon, whether it's a carbon tax, it's a mandate, it's an incentive, it's a tax, I don't know. But what I would like to see is that there is a global framework, not a regional one, but a global one, to give visibility to shipowners, to give visibility to energy suppliers in their future investments. That's the point.
Thanks, Jerome. And Francois, I just want to pull you in now. You know, the energy transition is key to decarbonizing the maritime sector. And you know, what are the key achievements to date that is important to highlight that we have done so far?
Thank you, Sanjay. Yeah, we understand, especially from this day in the previous panel discussion, that it's we have a challenge here. The IMO is challenging us. We have some targets, minus 40% CO2 emission 2030, at least minus 50% 2050. But and as discussed with the previous panel discussion, it's also about leadership. And our leaders have maybe to put additional challenge And that's what was done within CMA CGM with our chairman, Rodolphe Saadé, who last year decided to go for net zero carbon 2050. But indeed, if we come back to the IPCC report, 2050 is far away. It's good to have a target in 2050, but we need solutions now also. So it's very important to act now. And in CMA CGM, we decided to go for, sorry, for LNG. It was a decision taken by our chairman in 2017 to invest in LNG. And since 2020, we have LNG vessels in the fleet. Today, we have 27 LNG container ships in our fleet operating under LNG. So it's really about acting now. LNG might not be the solution, might not be the end solution, but at least it's a solution right now. So we have to act now. We have to use what is available to us. As already mentioned, we have to start to bend the curve. So yeah, we started to invest in LNG vessels. We have 27 right now, 44 planned for delivery, 44 in the fleet in 2024, and probably more than 60 in 2026. So we are acting now. And especially, we are talking, of course, about decarbonization. But LNG, also you have to keep in mind, it's a clean fuel. Okay, it produces CO2, but the reduction in sulfur oxide is nearly 99%. Reduction in NOx is 92%, and in fine particles, it's 91%. So, especially in city ports like Singapore with a lot of vessels, this kind of fuel can be also a great achievement because it's not only about CO2, it's also about people and health of people. So it's important to act now, to take whatever is available. The achievement also, and we talked about it previously, it's about the supply chain. On LNG, when it was decided to invest in these big container vessels, we have some 23,000 TEUs container vessel operated on LNG. The supply chain was not really in place, especially for this kind of vessel with 18,000 cubic meters tanks. We needed ship-to-ship bunkering, and partnership is important with TotalEnergies. The first bunkering of 23K vessels was done in Rotterdam together with TotalEnergies. It was in Rotterdam. Now we have in Fos, close to Marseille, in south of France. We have one port also in Shanghai where we can bunker this kind of vessels. And of course, since 1 year in Singapore. Singapore, it's with thanks to MPA support and dynamism, and we can see thanks for this great event. It's very good to see all these people talking about decarbonization. So it's the way we go forward. We cannot afford to wait for 2050. We have to take decisions right now. And maybe it's not the best decision, but let's not have the perfect enemy of the good. Okay, let's act right now. And maybe to reply to the question that was raised before, okay, there is IMO putting targets. There are customers that might help us to move, but it's also our role to make the customer move also, to try to go to them and say, okay, we have this solution, we have green vessels, do you agree to come with us and to do partnership and invest in this also. So we have in CMA CGM some solutions for this. We have a dedicated service for customers called ACT with CMA CGM Plus, giving some options on biofuels, on LNG, and we just recently had a contract with Electrolux, who announced that they will ship in 2022 40,000 TEUs, containers, sorry, using our cleaner energy LNG solution. So it's also our side to put this, and this is acting now, and this is an achievement.
Yeah, thanks for that, Francois. And I just want to go to Akamatsu-san, especially this concept of new builds versus retrofits for the supply, investments into the new supply chain. What are your thoughts on that, Akamatsu-san?
Yes, I think that is depending upon the fuel choice. So if we talk about methanol, LNG or something already there, therefore I think that's not a big decision, just they go or not. But if we talk about like ammonia, which we don't have the system, so in such case, I think the key is we do together. Means that's why we told you we are under development of integrated project. So we develop the vessel with ammonia engine and with the shipping company and shippers to work together for ammonia vessel and a bunkering system like Singapore. We are working with the Singapore Bunkering Consortium together to develop ammonia bunkering system. And of course, we have to discuss with ammonia producers to prepare the supply chain. Therefore, it is not a chicken and egg. We have to do together. So that's the key.
Excellent point, Akamatsu-san. David, from E1 Marine, well, what challenges do you think you're facing with all these future fuels and maritime applications?
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay. Very good question. Actually, we have been working on this type of problem for almost 2 to 3 decades. Because just want to give you a little bit of introduction about E1 Marine. We are a joint venture of a technology provider, E1 Core from US, Maritime Partners, inland waterway supplier in New Orleans, US, and also Armor Shipping, which is a base in Singapore here. So both Maritime Partners and Armor Shipping came to us for the technology. Partly, well, we have been doing the, as you know, methanol conversion to hydrogen. I mean, we deal with methanol for 2, 3 decades. I myself working on it for 2 decades already. My boss, like 3 decades. We've been working on the hydrogen problem, hydrogen challenges. That's our career. So we definitely agree that the adoption speed, that's what everyone cares about. We really want to see the technology. Well, the customer definitely want it now. I hear it like every time. Can you give me the product now? I mean, the adoption speed is important. The availability of the feedstock, the fuel is important. The infrastructures need to be there. The regulations, very important. Otherwise, we don't have the right regulation that supports the use of the future fuels. Nobody's going to do anything because they don't want to do the wrong thing. Of course, economics is always important. When we work on hydrogen, I mean, I'm not going to hide from everyone that hydrogen is expensive. But there are ways to bring down the cost. And I love green hydrogen, by the way. I mean, don't get me wrong that although we are working on methanol to hydrogen, we need green hydrogen because we believe in methanol as a hydrogen carrier. And also for ammonia. I mean, we need green hydrogen for the green ammonia. So the economics is important, the regulation and infrastructure, and the most important thing I find is from both hydrogen world as well as methanol world, education. we need to have this kind of forum, even more, or even like in a more civilian level, put it this way, the society has to accept the fuel. I mean, I went through the phases when people totally get scared by methanol and hydrogen. I mean, my friend in Japan, my colleague in Japan, he still say that Japanese has this regulation that's basically resistance to methanol. However, I'll give you an example in China. I mean, this is a total transformation. I remember when I went to China, like in 2010, there's this methanol poisoning in your alcohol. They do that. But through education, a lot of work through the Methanol Institute and the MIT in China, it's not a big deal anymore. I mean, before pandemics, I was in China. I mean, they love it. They wanted to put it as a second most strategic fuel of the country. I mean, I'm seeing that transformation, and this is through education, promotion, and a lot of more scientific work, scientific data. So I really think that the most important thing to educate the public, to educate the private sector, as well as the government sector, is very important. And we need, once we can get through the message, I think there will be, things will just follow through.
Yeah, thanks for that, David. And I'm gonna turn to Jacob, who's online, and ask the big question, the elephant in the room. Do you believe that customers today are willing to pay for the premium associated with green shipping? How can we get more customers on board?
Thanks a lot, and I hope you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Well, I think that is a good question, and I think what we have seen over the last 2-3 years is that customer demand for green shipping is clearly picking up, and quite frankly at a pace that we were not expecting. We started to pilot a product where our customers based on biofuel can buy carbon neutral shipping from us back in 2019. And we've seen a quite exponential increase in the interest on that product. I think we've more than tripled the volumes every year, and now it's becoming a real sizable product actually. So I think, and yes, to your question, are they willing to pay for it? Because that's really the new thing. Because if we're offering this for free, of course, it would be easy, an easy choice for the customer. But it does come at a premium of I would say 10-15% on top of a normal shipping rate in container shipping. And moreover, whereas demand in the beginning came from maybe not surprisingly big consumer-facing brands, we also now see demand picking up from other sectors, business to business. And I think the reason for that is that many of our customers are setting targets themselves to reduce their CO2 emissions, and for them, unlike shipping companies, they don't burn a lot of fuel, so most of their emissions are so-called scope 3 emissions or supply chain emissions, which means that they're completely dependent on, for example, us as shipping companies to help them reduce their CO2 emissions. And because this is becoming so important for them, they are also willing to pay for it. Of course, there are customers that will probably never get to that point, but there is a big chunk of customers in our business that we think will be willing to pay because this is of their key interest. But at some point, of course, we will need a regulatory level playing field. We will need a sizable carbon tax to create a level playing field between the green fuels and the fossil fuels.
Thanks for that, Jacob. Very important part of the equation is getting the customer to pay. So, a multi-fuel scenario seems to be the current narrative, and I believe very much the future landscape, if we are going to meet decarbonization targets, is to contribute to the fight against the existential devastation to the planet within the shortest time frame. And we've mentioned the word bending the curve. I think it depends when you bend it downwards in terms of reducing emission, or you bend it upwards in terms of accelerating decarbonization. But this poses challenges for fuel producers, port infrastructure provisions, demand signals from ship owners and charterers for greener fuels for the specific routes they travel. So Francois, may I? As a ship owner, how do you go about considering a multi-fuel strategy to ensure your fleet is achieving the desired reduction of CO2 emission for the different ports of call?
Well, earlier I mentioned that we started with LNG. We are continuing to invest in LNG, but it's not the end. I mean, we are pretty sure there is no silver bullet. There will be plenty solutions, not only one. We can just look at the diversity of vessels. CMA CGM is operating container ships. We have various sizes. Some are just a few hundred containers. Some are many thousands of containers. Some are operating on a coastal trade. Some are operating from US to China. And it's only on the container ship. Then you have the offshore industry with also many different types of vessel, mini operations. And also different age. In the previous panel discussion, it was mentioned that, some vessels are delivered right now or have been delivered 1 month ago, but some are 20 years old, 15, 10. So for sure, the solution will not be the same. So we are continuing on LNG because it's something we can upgrade. The next step, the future of LNG is biomethane, synthetic methane, e-methane, to get the production from agricultural waste, industrial waste. And of course, for e-methane, it's something that we are all dreaming of. It's a carbon capture. But so there is a future for LNG. That's why also we are still investing in LNG vessels for e-methane ready. But we are also looking at biofuels, some alternatives. So we are right now testing 32 vessels on biofuels. In fact, we started in 2019 on biofuels to test the concept and the technology, let's say, to ensure that we can run with biofuels. So there is no problem about that. Now we are testing on 32 vessels across the world, different lines, to ensure that the emissions are in line with our expectation, because so far we don't have regulation covering this. So once again, thanks to MPA to support this, because on our Singapore flag vessels, we are supported by MPA for this. And we bunkered biofuel 1 month ago in Singapore. So this is one option, but we have to keep in mind also that biofuel might be an option, but we have to take care that it doesn't compete with food source, because biofuel is coming from, we can have used cooked oil, but we can have also palm tree oil and some other source that might compete with the food source. So we have to ensure that we are not only looking at the vessel, but also at the whole supply chain. Apart from biofuel, we are also looking at hydrogen. We are a partnership with Energy Observer. The vessel was in Singapore not so long ago, a few days ago. And we are looking at it, maybe not for all our vessels. We are partner on the first Energy Observer vessel, which is a small catamaran traveling the world. We started in February 2020, and it's only powered by solar panels, wind, and hydrogen. But the conclusion is that probably hydrogen will be a solution for coastal vessels where we can refuel often, and maybe not on large vessels on long trades. And now we are engaged in a second partnership with them for Energy Observer 2, which will be a cargo, a small cargo, 240 TEUs, powered by hydrogen with fixed sails. So it's a laboratory. We continue to work on our LNG or our future on biofuels, but we keep our eyes open. It's important, and our goal is in 2023 to have 10% alternative fuel in our global supply.
Thank you for that, Francois. And Jerome is a fuel supplier. There are many aspects of the future fuel supply chain that still remains unresolved. From your perspective, what approach should ship owners take when developing their fuel strategies? We've heard from CMA CGM, but from your perspective as a fuel supplier, how should they think about it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and we had some comments from CMA earlier. We had Lars with PIL and Maersk and even ONE on Monday commenting on this topic. So I will not speak on their behalf. I mean, their fuel strategy, I mean, that's their strategy. But what I see today in the industry is that there are two pillars to a strategy. There is a short-term one, where you would imagine that you start with what is available now. I mean, the alternative fuels available now, and one of them is LNG. As we already said, it's available, and we see a massive shift within the shipping industry to LNG. I mean, I'm very glad because it cuts GHG by a quarter, let's say, if you improve the vessel with energy-efficient technology, if you account for biogas in the next future, that will be even higher. So that is what I would call a short-term strategy. Look at what is available today. But the most important part is the long-term, because these vessels will sail for 20, 25 years. And for that, well, in my view, but first of all, when you have a dual fuel, you have a natural hedge in the market. If one of the two fuels is not available, likely the other one will be available, and the two could be greened. I mean, in a way or another, conventional with biofuels, drop-in biofuels, or gas with biogas, e-methane, or retrofitted, let's say someday, if it makes sense, and I hope it will make sense someday. But my point here to finish is that for this mid to long-term strategy, you would like to ensure that you have secured a supply that is suddenly a sort of bespoke supply with your energy supplier. And I would recommend then that you engage with the energy supplier on for a more partenarial discussion than a commercial discussion. This is what we have been doing in the past at TotalEnergies, what we are currently doing as well, and making sure that there are appropriate solutions for your future energy supplies.
Thanks for that, Jerome. And I'm going to turn to David now. From the perspective of both port infrastructure and vessel application, among the future fuels, ammonia, hydrogen, methanol, biofuels, what are your perspectives in terms of its application to maritime industry?
Thank you. That's actually a very interesting question, and some of the projects that me and my colleagues are actually working on, both ports and marine vessels. We have been, I got a question recently asking me about, how long is there any ships, hydrogen ships around? Is there any hydrogen-based vessel around? Well, there are. I mean, at least for about a decade already, and most of them are in Europe. I believe most of them are in Europe. A little bit of it in the US. They've been around for a while, but they are like really small ships, about 100 kilowatt plus or minus. And there's also some port applications in US. So, but there's actually a growing interest of both marine vessel application and port application recently. For example, for us, we have been developing projects in US and Europe and now Singapore for port application, for coal ironing, reefers. I mean, the cold chain is important. I mean, I keep telling my Taiwanese friend, I mean, don't forget the vaccine. You need the cold chain, you need the freezer. And that actually is a lot of electricity if you count it. And well, I come from Taiwan, and recently we have had some grid problem. We had some blackout because the grid just can't handle it. I mean, people complain that it's the source, the power generator. No, I think it's the grid. So how to help the grid? We have distributed generation. It can be a hydrogen-based reefer solution has been around for a bit in US and Europe, small projects. But we are seeing that this kind of project is going to grow in the, per unit size in terms of hundreds of kilowatt, maybe even megawatts. So basically, you just drop a 20 feet container box in the harbor. Actually, our partner, Kaizen Clean Energy, is developing this project with us in Port of Houston, Port of New York, and New Jersey. And we are also working on projects in Norway. So it's a containerized solution. Let's drop it. Well, you can solve a lot of the electrical requirement. Be real. I'm not going to expect a fuel cell car or fuel cell truck running, but you still need the EV. I mean, this is happening. I mean, I think Singapore is also getting more and more EV in Singapore. I mean, same thing in Taiwan. We only had like 9,000 EV so far, but this will grow. I mean, that's the fact. And then the grid is going to have a hard time to handle the electricity. So what I'm seeing is you will start to grow from the port, then the marine vessels. Marine vessels wise, actually in the past probably like less than 100 kilowatt, but I think this is going to grow faster because I'm a ballot power system, Cummins now you call it, and also power cell. They are announcing megawatt projects, and so are we. I mean, I have a booth here. I'm happy to talk more about it. We have a towboat. They will be launched at the end of 2023. It's a megawatt towboat. They'll be operating in the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to replicate this in Europe, and we really hope to have some partners in Singapore.
Thanks for that, David. Jacob, I hope you're still there. Why is Maersk betting on green methanol for decarbonizing your fleet?
Well, thank you for that question. And first of all, let me say that, like has always been said by others, that the future is going to probably have a lot of different green fuels. Methanol, we think, is going to be one of them. And we've set ourselves some targets where we say that we will reduce our emissions for our business across our entire business to zero in 2040. But already in 2030, we want to reduce our carbon intensity in our shipping business by 50% compared to 2020. So a 50% cut from 20 to 30. And we also say that by 2030, we want 25% of our fleet running on green fuels. And green fuels we define as fuels that has a CO2 reduction of more than 70% on a life cycle basis. In that view, methanol is really, in our view, the only green fuel that has the potential to scale right now, because the engine technology is there, and we believe that the production of green methanol can be scaled up quite rapidly. So we're betting on methanol. We are also seeing that to make it happen, we need to establish not only a lot of infrastructure, of course, has also been mentioned by others, but also, more importantly, the production of green methanol. Today, there is, I think, around 30,000 tons of green methanol production globally, and none of that is going into shipping. It's going into plastics productions and things like that. And for the first 12 big vessels that we have ordered, which will be delivered, all of them by 2025. We will need around 500,000 tons of green methanol. So we're pushing hard on scaling up the green methanol production to make the green transition happen in this decade, or to have it to a very large extent happen already in this decade.
Right. Thanks, Jacob. And this is a good segue to ask the second big elephant in the room, to Akamatsu-san. Your thoughts on how port and flag states can help catalyze the transition to a multi-fuel scenario.
Okay, thank you. So I think with the port, I would like to go together, keep going together. And so like Castor Initiative and our project, we try to deliver the first vessel in 2025 or early 2026. So which means we need to make a contract sometimes early next year. But before that, we need to know what would be a key element, key requirement of ammonia bunkering, like in Singapore. So in such case, of course, we don't need the details, but we need to know what would be a key requirement. So I don't like to put the pressure on the Sanjay-san about as a GCMD, but so that's we have to challenge. And also incentive, I think many people talked about, and we don't know because IMO is now talking about something, but maybe the ports or flag or any like green corridors, maybe each positions, they may consider some benefit for end users because the decarbonization should be driven by end users, cargo owners. So I think all of us, we should consider to provide what can be benefit, incentive to end user who pay the freight. I think that would be a key question.
Thank you, Akamatsu-san. And yeah, don't worry, GCMD enjoys pressure. We're running out of time, so we need to move fast. As we look ahead to set the maritime sector up for success and find the least cumbersome pathway towards IMO targets, at least, and zero, and even negative carbon shipping at best at 2050, we all need to have our hands on deck. All hands means producers, supply chain, government, and customers, consumers. Jerome, what is your outlook for shipping's global energy mix in 2030 and 2050? What is the technology maturity level of the different alternative fuels, potential competition with other end-use markets? And how do you see this adoption timeline of these fuels? So, yeah, it's a few questions in there, but energy mix, maturity level, competition with end-use, other end-use like the energy sector for one, and the timelines.
I mean, so many questions. I can say whatever I want on the outlook. I will be wrong. But let me just say one thing and we will be doing whatever we can to accelerate everything. The coming decade is certainly a decade where for the some of the very low carbon fuels, it will be a decade of trials, of demonstrations, of FIDs, of investment decisions, to ensure that in the 30s we can see the uptake of these fuels. So I would say by 2030, probably, keeping on the trend on the shift toward LNG and seeing a couple of big projects on the hydrogen-based fuels. The other point we can say on the outlook is that low carbon fuels are not only green, they can be blue, meaning with the carbon capture on steam reformers or in the, there are many ways to capture carbon along the production chain. So that can be one other way to tap into something that is lower carbon and that can still be good enough for the time being. So this is, for me, the next 10 to 15 years. And then after, who knows, but certainly mass hydrogen production will be there. And then we can think about the massive deployment at scale in the shipping industry of the hydrogen-based fuels. This is what we are all hopeful today. To say a word on the competition between sectors, between segments, yes, indeed, that's a reality. The reality is that green ammonia will be of interest for the fertilizers industry, for the power generation industry as well, same as pure hydrogen, but same as e-methane, because all the infrastructures will be also welcoming e-methane in the grid, especially in the pipes, to power electricity generation. That's the same for methanol. Methanol is is already used. There is already a 120 million ton market of methanol, and all these users may want to green this methanol as well. So there is a huge competition, and for that, to tackle it as a shipping industry, I see it, under the long-term commitment perspective. We have said it's either coming from the customer side, it's either coming from the regulatory side, from the mandates, or some other form of regulation. And I think this is the point. We need, as a shipping industry, we need to be fast in setting up our framework to be first movers and the first lifters of the very first project of these low-carbon fuels. And that's why we are working, and this is the significance of what we are doing along with ITOCHU and the ammonia, is to make sure it is ready soon enough to make sure that we can invest in due time on the larger scale production. This is one way to support the industry.
Right. Thanks for Jerome. I'm conscious we're really coming to the end of the session, and I want to just take a tangent and go to Akamatsu-san, because we haven't talked about this. Akamatsu-san, will the carbon levy help catalyze the new fuel transition? And if so, where should the levy be deployed?
Okay, that's good questions. And so I think there is a possibility to support. One is fuel cost gap. The second is maybe additional cost for new building. Third is infrastructure for the bunkering. The fourth is production for new fuel. But again, this should be driven by end user. Means if we put the priorities, first priority should be the gap of fuel price. And the second, additional cost of new building. And then the third and the fourth, maybe we can say if the gap, fuel cost gap can be covered, then indirectly, bunkering infrastructure and the fuel production can be supported. Right. So in that sense, maybe we should support, because the freight is time charter equivalent and the fuel. That is the two elements. Therefore, we should support for that.
Thanks, Akamatsu-san. We're down to the last 10 seconds, but I just want to get perspectives from Francois, David, and Jacob, and very quickly, in terms of the future fuel scenario, what is the roadmap? I mean, how are we thinking about the roadmap towards the GHG reduction?
Well, our roadmap is, you mentioned about all hands on deck, is about partnership to find, some solutions. As we mentioned, there won't be a silver bullet. So we are partnering. We have to partner also with the authorities, as mentioned, David. We have to ensure that we are moving all together. And I don't have crystal ball to say what will be the fuel of the future, but it's good to see. Lars mentioned we should not work alone. Yes, indeed, we have to partner, and maybe not all in the same direction, but at least we have to collaborate and work with others in the industry.
Thanks for that. And David, on collaboration specifically, how do we need to work together?
Thank you. I love that question. That's kind of like, I'm living for that. From my perspective, collaboration through a supply chain. From fuel supplier, fuel supplier actually sometimes they need to, where the raw material is from. If you're looking at methanol, e-methanol, we need to work with, just for me, maybe just I don't want to get the methanol, but the thing is that the methanol guys need to get from the green hydrogen guys and the carbon capture guy. I'm really glad you mentioned that, and that's actually very important as we move forward, both technologically, collaboratively between various private sectors, as also the government. I think government is very important. They have to be the leadership. I mean, look at all the renewable energy program that is successful or reasonably successful. The government play a very important role.
Right. And Jacob, you drew, Maersk has drawn a line in the water or line in the sand on green methanol, and scaling up is going to be the biggest challenge. How does Maersk see that whole collaborative momentum? I mean, are you driving it, or are you hoping the port states or flag states will drive it? What are your thoughts on that?
I think our focus right now is to really scale up green methanol production, and that's not something that we are doing as Maersk. That is something we are doing with a broad range of partners that are interested in being part of this journey and to create a business out of it. So I think it's also about. I mean, I completely agree with all what was said about the infrastructure and so forth, but it's also about, I think, as a shipping industry, to reach out to partners which are maybe not used to be partners to shipping industry and work with them on creating actually the green fuel supply, because I think that it can easily be a different set of suppliers of fuel in the future than what we have today, because some of these energy companies and other industrial companies that we are working with, they want to move really fast in this agenda, and therefore we partner with them to scale the green methanol production now.
Right, thanks, Jacob. Okay, we run out of time, and I really thank all of you for staying the course. Please give a round of applause to the panelists, and let's not make collaboration a buzzword, but an action word, because we all like to hold on to buzzwords, but I think we don't have much time for buzzwords. Let's get into action, and let's make this opportunity today at the Maritime Week to really get those discussions going on how we can work together across in-sector and out-sector to come together. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kuttan, and our distinguished panelists. Thank you for your time.